Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, when I'm a parent, I'm going to be a cool parent? Have any of those thoughts ever ran through your mind that whenever you are a parent, what kind of parent you're going to be? Well, like most of us that take a nursing or any psychology class, when you take lifespan growth and development, you learn about the 4 parenting styles. What is the best parenting style? Okay? There are 4 parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved. I think if you look at the various ways of living that we all do, you see all of these various styles in each family. I myself, that I like to cite from my experiences as my mom did with us, she was very strict and very demanding. As an authoritative is more of enforcing the rules, and this tends to have a more of a risk taker. The child tends to have more of a rebel later in the end, or might feel too trapped and in the end just go off and do whatever they want. I myself had a very strict mom and she did a wonderful job. I had all of my priorities straight, but it was never enough. I had A's, maybe a B, and it was still never enough for her. Then to where I see my other aunt, who's very permissive with her kids and doesn't enforce rules as much, but they also don't go out and experience and go out. So it's kind of, you gotta find that balance. Well, now that I myself am a parent, I don't want to be not that way like my mother was with me, very strict. I feel like if you all have the parenting type of authoritative, the child seems to not feel good enough. Their self-esteem kind of goes down. They don't perform well because they're too afraid that the parent is going to punish them, because authoritative parenting is more of enforcing the rules. And although according to Parenting Well-Being, one of the books that I had looked up, the most beneficiary parenting style is authoritative. Why? Because of what it gives. You focus on obedience and then punishment, but you're a little bit more positive with it, if that makes any sense. Now, authoritarian, you focus on just obedience, 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 and the punishment over discipline, as you can see here. The parent is constantly pointing the finger at the child, and that, as you can see, can give you anxiety and get you all worked up. And if you look at the percentages too, it can also lead to suicideness, mental illness, and head imbalances, because you're constantly thinking of failure even though you're doing well. And there's also the permissive, which is you don't enforce the rules, kids will be kids, you're more of a laid back parent. Well, you can be that way, and then you also want to see, well, if your kid's not performing academically right, you want to say, oh, I need to be a little bit more disciplined with my child. It's very hard once you think about that, like I said in the beginning, of what kind of parent you're going to be, which kind of parenting style you're going to take. I myself have a daughter, and sometimes whenever I'm saying things, or when I catch myself saying something a certain way, I'm like, oh my goodness, I sound like my mother. I feel like we all have that deja vu in our head one day when we think, oh my god, I sound like my father, or oh my god, I sound like my mother. It can be in a positive or a negative way. My mother is a great mom, but she yelled a lot, instead of being a little more softer with things. I feel like if she said things with a little more compassion, a little more understanding, I wouldn't feel as anger. I never disrespected my mother. We don't want to disrespect our parents, but, when they talk to you in another form, you tend to understand and do better instead of just pointing the finger and getting yelled at, if you know what I'm saying. And, with my daughter, I want to be a little more laid back with her. I don't want to always yell at her. I want to be a little bit more understanding and be more patient. One of the scenarios that I like to cite from my own life is with the cooking. My mom really didn't have patience. She would just say, oh, You should know how to do it. You should know what you're doing. Well, no, I didn't. And I was always scared to ask a question. You know, when with the authoritative parenting, which is the most beneficiary, I think that it is the best how they cite in the parent well-being page, because you're being more positive about it, but you're still being disciplined. And when I mean you're being positive about it, is you're caring, you're saying it with compassion, and the way you're communicating with your kids is a major point. Because when you're just constantly yelling and pointing the finger, then you just feel belittled and you feel like you're never enough. So if you think about that, you probably don't think about that depending on what age you are, but when you're thinking about when you're going to be a parent one day, it makes a lot of sense to think about how are you going to raise your child? What are you going to make them believe? What are you going to push boundaries on? What are you going to teach your child that is going to have an impact in their life?